Hello, everyone. In this video, we will go over some basic planning principles that guide public administrators, additional considerations to keep in mind, as well as the case of the Marawi City rehabilitation as an example of planning in the public sector. Now, there are some basic planning principles that we need to understand in order to get a comprehensive view of what planning is like in the public sector. The first principle is goal oriented planning. All planning should start with a clear goal. So, without specific objectives, it becomes difficult to measure success. For example, if the goal is to improve public transportation in Iligan City, planners need to set clear targets, such as reducing travel time by, let's say, 20% within 5 years. Another basic planning principle is flexibility and adaptability. Plans must be adaptable to changing conditions. So, public administration environments are dynamic, and political, economic, or environmental changes can require adjustments to the plan. For example, local governments in the Philippines often adapt their plans to deal with typhoons and flooding, and which that may not have been anticipated initially. Third is coordination and integration. Government plans should be coordinated across different departments and agencies to avoid duplication of efforts and ensure resource efficiency. For example, the Build program required the coordination of different government agencies, such as the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, and the Department of Transportation, or the DOTR. Efficiency and resource allocation. Effective planning helps ensure that resources, whether financial, human, or physical, are allocated in a way that maximizes efficiency. For instance, the efficient distribution of resources during the COVID-19 pandemic, from the vaccination campaign to the distribution of relief goods, required detailed planning and careful resource allocation. Now that we've covered the essential components of planning, there are a few additional aspects that public administration students should be aware of. Number one, planning is not a one time event, it is an ongoing process. Governments need to constantly review, adapt, and update their plans to ensure they remain relevant. For example, as economic or environmental conditions change, a national development plan might need to be adjusted to reflect these changes. This ensures that the government remains responsive and adaptable to the shifting needs of the population. In public administration, also, it is essential to engage stakeholders in the planning process. Stakeholders include not just government officials, but also citizens, non governmental organizations, and private sector partners. Including these various stakeholders ensures that the plan reflects the needs and the priorities of the entire community. In the Philippines, for instance, participatory budgeting processes allow local communities to have a say in how public funds are allocated, making planning more inclusive and democratic. Third, no plan is complete without a monitoring and evaluation, or M&E framework. M&E helps ensure that the plan is working as intended and provides data that can be used to make adjustments. In the public sector, an M&E system ensures accountability and transparency, which are both vital in maintaining public trust. For instance, the evaluation of the 4Ps program has been key in determining its impact on poverty reduction and making necessary program adjustments. And finally, public administrators must also consider the ethical dimensions of planning. This includes ensuring that plans are fair, that they are just, and that they are equitable, especially when dealing with resource allocation. So, for example, when planning housing projects, the government must ensure that marginalized and vulnerable populations are prioritized and that development is inclusive. To wrap up our discussion, let's consider an interesting and relevant case, and that is the Marawi City Rehabilitation Plan. So the plan was developed after the Marawi siege that took place in 2017, where a large part of the city was destroyed due to fighting between the Philippine military and armed terrorist group. The government's goal was to rebuild the city and restore the livelihood of its people through a comprehensive rehabilitation and recovery plan. The destruction of Marawi City left thousands of families homeless. Many lost their jobs, and even basic infrastructure like schools, hospitals, and roads were severely damaged. In response, the government, led by the Task Force Bangon Marawi or TFBM, launched a large scale rehabilitation program with an estimated budget of 60 billion pesos. The plan included rebuilding homes, infrastructure, restoring basic services, and providing livelihood programs. The Marawi Rehabilitation Plan involved extensive stakeholder engagement. Government agencies, local officials, civil society organizations, and international donors all worked together to create a strategic plan. The plan had multiple components. Number one, housing and resettlement, and this focuses on building permanent housing for displaced residents. Two, infrastructure development, and this one focuses on rebuilding roads, bridges, and public utilities. It also had a component on livelihood programs, and this is where creating jobs and opportunities for affected families was the focus. And there was also a focus on cultural preservation to ensure that Marawi's Islamic heritage was respected and preserved during the reconstruction. The process involved data collection, stakeholder consultation, and the development of a phased implementation plan. The planning also included contingency measures to make sure that the city could quickly recover from any setbacks during the rebuilding process. Now, despite a very detailed plan and a well funded plan as well, the rehabilitation faced numerous challenges, including funding delays, coordination issues, and logistical problems. However, the Marawi City case highlights the importance of long term strategic planning in the public sector. It also shows the significance of community involvement and multi agency coordination in rebuilding efforts. This case is particularly relevant because it illustrates the complexity of planning in post crisis scenario or context. It also highlights the importance of engaging stakeholders, including the affected communities themselves, in the planning process. There's also the role of government leadership and coordination across various agencies in implementing a large scale rehabilitation program. And finally, it highlights the necessity of flexible and adaptive planning in the face of real world challenges, such as funding shortfalls or unforeseen delays.